Welcome, listeners, to the Midnight Screen Files, where the night is long, the air is heavy, and some stories refuse to stay buried. Hospitals are meant to be places of healing, but when the full moon rises over Sentinel City Medical, some patients don't leave the way they came in. Tonight, we bring you 3 interconnected stories from one long cursed shift, where the dead don't always stay dead, and something far worse is waiting just outside your door. Turn off the lights, listen closely, and remember, some bites never heal. Let's begin. The blood in my veins.
The world blurred in and out of focus, flickering between consciousness and the feverish half-dreams clawing at my mind. The rotors of the rescue helicopter hummed above me, rhythmic and steady, but my pulse was a war drum in my skull. Too fast, too loud. The paramedics in flight suits hovered over me, their words distant and fragmented. Dehydration, possible infection, something bit him, no ID, get him to Sentinel City Medical. I tried to speak. My throat felt scratched raw, like I'd been screaming. A sharp jab in my arm, IV fluids. The cold liquid flowed into my veins, but instead of relief, I felt ice curling under my skin. I twitched against the straps securing me to the gurney. One of the medics leaned closer. He had sharp eyes, dark brows furrowed in concern. His voice cut through the static in my head. "You with us, man?" His lips moved. But before he spoke, I already knew what he was going to say. My breathing hitched. That wasn't normal. I turned my head weakly, staring out of the open side door of the chopper. Through the whipping wind and flashing red lights, I saw the forest below. It stretched out endlessly, swallowing the land in rolling waves of black treetops. I was never supposed to make it out. The landing was a blur of motion and sound, shouting voices, flashing lights, the heavy slap of stretcher wheels against tile. A PA system droned overhead, calling for doctors, paging the on-call trauma team. "We've got a John Doe, male, late 20s, found in the Northwoods. Unresponsive on site, fever 104, possible sepsis or unidentified infection, BP unstable, pupils, wait, check his pupils." A flashlight seared through my vision. I groaned, squeezing my eyes shut, but something felt off. A nurse murmured, "Jesus, his pupils are blown out, what the hell?" Their voices dipped, a quiet conversation just beyond my hearing, but I still heard every word, the blood in their veins. The hum of electricity in the walls, the murmur of a cough 2 hallways away. The air reeked of chemicals, disinfectant, and... I inhaled sharply. Blood, my body burned. Sweat pooled in the creases of my elbows, dampened the gown they'd put me in. The fever was turning my bones into molten metal. My heart should have been slowing down. But it wasn't. It was keeping pace with every single person in this hospital. Thump, 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 thump. The door slammed open. "Mr. Doe?" I flinched at the sound, twisting toward the voice. A nurse stood by the bedside, reading off my vitals. M. Green, dark eyes, sharp cheekbones, a light freckling across the bridge of her nose. She smelled like vanilla lotion and something else. Something richer, something deeper. I locked my jaw. She took a step closer. "How are you feeling?" I tried to answer, but my throat was so dry. She must have taken it as an attempt because she half smiled, reaching for a syringe. "We're giving you something for the fever, okay? Let's get those fluids in you." "No. No, no, no." The IV in my arm burned. The moment the fluid hit my bloodstream, my stomach twisted violently. I lurched sideways, retching over the side of the bed. Alarms blared as my body rejected the treatment. I heard Carter swear under her breath, pressing the call button. "He's going into arrest. We need a doctor in here, now." The world blurred, then sharpened too much. I blinked rapidly, but nothing felt real. The colors, the lights, the noise, it was all too much, but also slipping away. My head throbbed, but not from pain. Something inside me was shifting, rearranging. My skin felt wrong. The hospital gown rubbed against me, irritating, like a layer of fabric between muscle and bone that no longer fit. The doctor's voice drifted into my ears, thick and heavy like sound underwater. "We're trying to help you," he was saying, his words slurred but too clear at the same time. "But we need to know, what bit you?" I opened my mouth, but my tongue felt foreign, like it wasn't meant to sit inside my mouth anymore. I should have remembered. I should have known. but the memory was rotting inside my brain like a spoiled fruit. I could taste it. Sickly sweet, decayed, fading. A flash of trees. A flicker of yellow eyes. The wet snap of bone between jaws too wide. I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight. I could feel every muscle in my body pulling too taut, stretching, twisting inside my skin. Something lurched under my ribs. It felt like my organs were shrinking. The fever that had boiled me alive from the inside out suddenly snapped to ice. The doctor's voice wavered. "Jesus Christ, get the restraints." Then, the scent hit me. A sharp metallic tang. I turned my head too fast, or maybe time slowed down. A nurse had nicked her finger on a metal tray. Just a scratch, just a single drop of blood. It hit the air and I smelled everything. Salt, copper, heat, life. I could smell her pulse, the iron pulsing beneath her skin, the warmth in her veins, the quick, sharp inhale as she lifted her hand instinctively to her mouth, sucking the wound. My stomach clenched violently, not in sickness, not in pain, in hunger. A hunger so deep, so primal, it rewrote everything I knew about being alive. I wasn't starving for food. I was starving for her. The machines screamed. My vitals spiked off the charts. The doctor lunged for the restraints. I flinched back, baring my teeth. Wait. My teeth. My tongue ran over them. Wrong. Too sharp. Too many. I let out a noise that wasn't human. Something was leaving me. Or I was leaving it. I felt every part of my body shutting down, but it wasn't a collapse. It wasn't decay. It was like a door slowly closing, one lock at a time, as I stepped through it. The fever that had been raging inside me vanished. My body had been in torment. Now it was just nothing. My fingers went numb. Then my arms. Then my legs. I was aware of my chest rising and falling, but it felt distant, like someone else was breathing for me. The noises in the room faded, but not all the way. They didn't vanish, they just became secondary, like a memory I wasn't paying attention to. The sound of the flatline blaring didn't scare me. I felt calm. The pain was gone, the noise was gone, the hunger was... No, the hunger was still there. It was the only thing that stayed. The last thing I saw was Nurse Green's face, wide-eyed as she stared at my open, lifeless eyes. Then, nothing. I had thought dying would be like falling asleep, like slipping into warm water. But I wasn't tired, I wasn't drifting, I was awake. More awake than I'd ever been. The hospital room was gone, but I could still feel it. I could still hear the heartbeats. Not mine, theirs, the doctors, the nurses, the other patients sleeping in their beds. I could feel them moving, sense their veins pulsing, smell their blood flowing through their bodies. I wasn't dead. I was something else. Something waiting.
The last shift.
It never gets easier. I tell myself it does. I tell myself that after 6 years at Sentinel City Medical, I'm used to this. The loss, the failure. But every time I hear that flatline, it feels the same. Like an invisible hand reaching into my chest and squeezing. The patient in room 216 had been a John Doe, airlifted from the forest. Fevered, confused, unstable. He died 20 minutes ago. I had done everything right, we all did. And yet, he was still gone. Holloway pulled his gloves off and let out a tired sigh. Call it. A long silence, then the cold, clinical confirmation. Time of death, 1:54 a.m. A heavy quiet followed. No one moved, no one spoke. Then, with the exhaustion only the night shift could bring, we started to clean up. The thing about death is it doesn't stop the living. There were still patients waiting, still meds to be administered, still nurses filing paperwork, walking halls, making sure people didn't slip away while no one was looking. I stepped into the break room, pressed my hands to the sink, and took a slow breath. The TV in the corner played a rerun of some old crime show, muted. I needed to get it together. I had 4 more hours left on my shift. You good? I turned to see Heather, one of the other nurses, slumped in a chair with a cup of coffee that had probably been sitting for hours. I nodded. Yeah, just a long night. She exhaled through her nose, shaking her head. Full moon. It always brings out the crazy cases. I let out a small laugh. You really believe in that? She smirked. Oh, I don't have to believe. Just have to work here long enough. 3 doctors were slumped around the table, looking just as dead as our patients. Dr. Holloway was nursing a can of Red Bull, flipping through a file. Dr. Patel had his head back against the wall, eyes half closed, like he was debating whether it was worth it to go home or just sleep in the on-call room. Then there was Dr. Simmons, leaning on the counter, stirring powdered creamer into coffee like it was the last thread holding her life together. None of them looked up when I walked in. "Jesus Christ," Patel muttered. "Tonight's a disaster." Simmons snorted. "Tell me about it. Some guy in the ER bit a security guard earlier." I blinked. "Bit him?" She nodded. "Like a rabid dog. Took 4 people to hold him down." Holloway let out a tired laugh. "We had a lady on the 3rd floor hallucinating that she was giving birth to spiders." Patel groaned. "Don't even get me started on that John Doe from 216. That made me stop. I pulled open the fridge, stalling for a second before I asked, "What about him?" Patel exhaled through his nose. "We don't even know what bit him. No animal marks we can identify. Just teeth. His symptoms made 0 sense either. And that fever," Simmons cut in, shaking her head. "I swear, I've been here long enough to know this place goes insane when there's a full moon." Patel chuckled. "Oh, here we go, Dr. Simmons and her lunar conspiracy theory." Simmons shrugged, unbothered. "Laugh all you want. ER cases spike every full moon. More psych episodes. More accidents. More weird shit. You think that's a coincidence?" Holloway smirked. "You suggesting we start locking up Silver?" Simmons took a sip of her coffee. "Wouldn't hurt." Patel rolled his eyes. "I think people are just idiots, and statistically more likely to do dumb shit at night." The conversation rolled on, half joking, half serious, but I couldn't shake it. It wasn't that I believed in werewolves or whatever the hell they were hinting at, but something about tonight felt strange. I pushed through the rest of my shift, checking vitals, handing off reports, making sure my other patients weren't decomposing right in front of me. But the unease wouldn't leave. It wasn't grief. I'd lost patients before. It wasn't fear. This was the job. It was something else. The hospital halls felt longer than usual. The overhead lights flickered. The ventilation system hummed, but beneath it I swore I heard breathing. And then, a pager notification. "Room 16. I stopped dead. No one should have been paging from that room. My pulse picked up. I reached for my radio. "Security, we need a check on room 216. Silence. Then, static. A voice crackled through. "Room 216 is empty." The hairs on my arms rose. I glanced at the monitors. The room's vitals were still online. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, like someone was still inside. I took a slow step back. I didn't know what was worse, the fact that there shouldn't be anyone in there, or the fact that something was. I didn't check room 216. Call me a coward. I don't care. I kept my head down, focused on finishing my damned shift. But I couldn't shake it. The feeling of being watched. The way the security cameras glitched when I passed. At one point, I caught Heather staring at the hallway monitor, her coffee forgotten in her hands. "What is it?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Just frowned. "The patient from 216. She hesitated. "I thought I just saw him. On the cameras." My mouth went dry. I forced a laugh. "It's probably an old feed." Heather didn't look convinced. Neither was I. By the time my shift ended, I had never been more relieved to leave. The minute I was outside, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The air was cold, crisp, cleansing. I made my way across the half-empty parking lot, already thinking about a hot shower and maybe a glass of wine. By the time I slid into the driver's seat and turned the key, I felt normal again. Just another shift. Just another long, endless night in Sentinel City Medical. I pulled out, drove through the darkened streets, my body aching, my mind already shifting into sleep mode. Home. The sight of it sent a wave of relief through me. I pulled into my driveway, the street quiet and empty, the glow of a single street lamp flickering against the hood of my car. I didn't notice the shadow in my back seat. I didn't hear the breathing. I didn't sense the presence waiting behind me. Not until it was too late. The attack came swift and brutal. A sharp, tearing pain at my neck. Teeth. Fangs. A weight crushed me against the steering wheel. I gasped. Choked. My vision blurred as my head snapped back. Heat rushed through my body like wildfire. My pulse pounded. My limbs twitched. The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed me was his face. The patient from room 216. My body slumped sideways into the passenger seat. I wasn't dead. I wasn't alive. I was something else.
The morticians escape.
The dead don't talk back. That's the only thing I like about this job. I work alone in the Sentinel City Medical morgue, a basement full of drawers, steel tables, and silence. The fluorescent lights hum, the ventilation system whispers. It's the only place in this damn city where I can actually think. I check the clipboard in my hand. 3 more bodies tonight. I sigh, roll my shoulders, and get to work. The city's suffocating me. I tell myself it's just the job. The hours. The stress. The constant smell of formaldehyde and industrial-strength soap. But the truth? I don't belong here. I have a plan. A quiet, private cabin deep in the woods. I bought it years ago, a fixer-upper tucked away from all of this. No sirens, no noise, no dead bodies hauled in every night. I just have to figure out how to convince my girlfriend to come with me. She loves the city, the hustle, the neon, the life. She doesn't understand why I want to disappear into the trees. Does this mean we break up? I don't know. I don't want to lose her, but I can't keep rotting in this city. Maybe if she just spent a weekend out there, she'd understand. Maybe she'd love it, maybe she wouldn't. I press my fingers against my temple, exhaling. No time for this right now. I pull the next body onto the table. The clipboard says John Doe, room 216. My stomach twists a little. I've heard about this guy. Brought in by helicopter after getting lost in the forest. Strange symptoms, no ID, flatlined in the ER. I glance down at him, tall, thin, pale. His body looks like it's been through hell, gashes across his arms, a healing wound on his throat. I frown, peeling back the sheet. His skin is cold but not clammy. He should be going into rigor mortis by now, but his muscles still seem loose. Weird. I reach for my scalpel. That's when I notice something. His chest. I stop. My fingers hover over his ribs, not quite touching. I swear I just saw it rise. A breath, a flicker of motion. My pulse kicks up, just nerve reflex. That's all. Bodies do that sometimes. I grab my scalpel again. I press the blade to his cold skin and start the first incision. His eyes snap open. I freeze. A fraction of a second. That's all. Then his pupils contract like a predator locking onto prey. His lips part. His throat clicks like he's trying to speak. Then in a voice that is not human he whispers, "I can hear your blood." He lunges. I barely have time to jerk back before he's on me, teeth sinking into my forearm. Pain explodes up my arm, white hot and sharp. I let out a choked scream, my vision going white. His grip is inhumanly strong. His fingers claw into my skin. I shove at him, but it's like pushing against stone. My heart is slamming in my chest. He's breathing. This corpse, this thing, is breathing. I feel it immediately. The bite isn't just pain. It's fire. It's cold. It's something wrong crawling under my skin. I stumble back, knocking over a tray of instruments. The tools crash to the floor, metal clattering against tile. He stands there, breathing heavily, his fangs glistening with my blood. His voice is barely above a whisper. It doesn't hurt for long. I collapse to my knees, my veins burn, my heart races, then slows. I try to crawl toward the panic button, but my limbs feel unsteady. Weak. The last thing I see is the morgue doors swinging open. And then, he's gone, escaping. My hands tremble. I can hear everything. The hum of the lights, the breathing of the bodies in their drawers, the distant sound of footsteps above me. I exhale, and my breath fogs in the cold air. I'm not dying. I'm changing. And Mandy is waiting for me at home.
Another night ends. The morgue is full, the streets are quiet, but somewhere in the city, something is still out there. Walking, watching, waiting. Sentinel City Medical will open its doors again tomorrow. More patients will come. More lives will end. And some will change into something else entirely. Sleep well, listeners, if you can.